Okay, we have the Vagina Whisperer, Dr. Sara. Is it Reardon? Is that how you say it?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. On the Mind Your Hormones podcast today, I'm so excited. I think I first heard you on Almost 30 podcast. I think that's maybe
Nice.
when I first heard you. And I've just been obsessed with your content ever since. So why don't you introduce yourselves to the community? And also, we have to talk about how you got the name Vagina Whisperer because I'm obsessed. I love
I
it.
love that. So I am Dr. Sara Reardon. I'm a board certified pelvic floor physical therapist. I've been practicing for 18 years. And as you mentioned, I have an Instagram account called the Vagina Whisperer. And I really started that 8 years ago when I was pregnant with my second son and just sharing a bunch of like birth prep and postpartum tips for my group of girlfriends. And they're the ones who called me the Vagina Whisperer.
I love it.
I know. And so the account has organically grown over the past 8 years to over 700,000 followers. And I
Awesome.
wrote a book about pelvic floor health for women. I'm about to launch an app. And really, all of this is in response to, I think, women saying, like, why doesn't anyone tell me about my pelvic floor? How do I know if I have a problem? Why doesn't my doctor refer me? So it's really in an effort to help women just better understand this part of their body and know
Yes.
where to get help and resources to either prevent or overcome pelvic floor problems.
I love that. It's like crazy that it's not required, like when you're at least pregnant and postpartum. Like learning about it now, I'm like, what? Like it's so wild. One of the only thing I regret during my pregnancy is that I didn't go to a pelvic floor physical therapist during pregnancy. I went postpartum, but I wish I did it during. And I always talk about that. I'm like, this is the one thing I wish I did. Like I hope everybody
I
goes.
know, but you didn't know. I mean, it's one of those things that nobody tells you. Like you're getting your ultrasounds, you're doing all this other
Yeah.
stuff, but nobody's saying, like, oh, your pelvic floor is changing during pregnancy. And
Yes.
even things like back pain, hip pain, sciatica, diastasis recti,
Hmm.
constipation, urinary leakage, like all of these are pelvic floor symptoms. And yet we're not
Yes.
like helping women get relief for them during pregnancy. And then I actually think postpartum, everybody should go,
Oh my
but then
God.
you're like, I have a
Yes.
baby and it's hard and
I
I'm
know.
overwhelmed. And so that makes it even more challenging.
It's so real. They should be like when you go for your ridiculous 6 week visit and they're just like, you're good and then you're out. They should at least have some like pelvic floor physical therapist there to like check things
I
out. I remember
know.
my gyno checking me. He's like, you're good to like run, have sex, everything. And I was like, well, actually, it was 4 weeks postpartum for me
Wow.
because it was the summer. And he's like, I know you guys probably want to go swimming. So I'll like clear you earlier. And I was like, I don't want to have sex right now.
I
Like,
know.
I'm
It's
like, I'm
so
all
wild.
set.
It's like they're like, that's the thing that we're worried about. I'm like, actually, we're not worried about that at all. And
Literally
so
0%.
At at 6 weeks postpartum, our pelvic floor muscle strength is at 50% of our pre-pregnancy strength. So we're sending moms back to exercise and work and sex and just our day-to-day lives, and our bodies are literally functioning at 50%, and we're not giving women any postpartum rehab or care. And so it just goes to show you that there are such big gaps in I think women's health care and maternal health care, that it
Mm.
affects us lifelong because if you don't feel good or if you can't exercise, I mean, these things, you can't be intimate with a partner. I mean, all of these have big ripple effects in other areas of your life.
Yes. Oh my God. And especially then after, if like finally when you have like a second to like come up and breathe and be like, okay, wait, now I want to like start taking care of myself. I could like, after like 3 months, you're kind of like a little out of the woods in a way. It's like, okay, what do I do? What's safe? What's not
Yeah.
safe? And then you feel like, okay, I have this lower belly pooch. What is going on? How do I fix it? So you do exercises that are making it worse. Like it's such a ripple effect.
Yeah, you're
Um,
so right. It is very easy to feel lost and nervous, to be like, well, what is okay to do? And I
yeah.
think that's really where I am so passionate. I mean, I started the Vagina Whisper really focusing much more on pregnancy and postpartum because that's where I was in my life. But
Mhm.
then it's really grown to be like, I'm perimenopausal now and focusing on that. And so many women have painful sex and focusing on that. And then
Yes.
so many women have like endometriosis or painful periods. And so it's really
Mhm.
grown to be like all pelvic health issues related because they are all connected. And
Right.
every stage of life as a woman, our pelvic floor needs something different. And again, to your point, like we're not being taught how to take care of it.
No, it's like the biggest thing you hear is like do Kegels,
I
but it's like,
know. It's
well,
like,
that could be
I mean,
detrimental too, right? If like you have a tight pelvic floor, would that be not something that's good? Like,
Correct. So, Kegels are pelvic floor contractions. It's like when you stop your urine stream midstream, that's a Kegel contraction. When you like hold in gas, when you have to toot in an elevator,
Mm,
that's a Kegel. So it's a closing and tightening of your pelvic floor muscles. And it's a contraction, it's an exercise. It's like doing a crunch, right?
right.
But when somebody has low back pain, you don't just say like, "Oh, just go do crunches, you'll be fine." That's the
Right.
same thing as like, "Oh, I'm peeing my pants," and somebody says, "Oh, just do Kegels, you'll be fine." Because it's like all
Right.
it is a contraction, but we have to really teach women how to contract their pelvic floors, but also how to relax them, to do these exercises in different positions. Because you don't just leak
Mhm.
like sitting in your car at the red light, you leak
Right.
during activity. How to
Right.
build that contraction into different exercises like Pilates, bars, squats, lunging, weightlifting, lifting strollers, lifting babies, all these things.
Oh,
And then to your point, a lot of women have pelvic floor tension, and Kegels could make their issue worse because those women need more like relaxation and yoga and breathing. So it's just super important that we don't have this like blanket prescription of do Kegels if you have any pelvic floor problem, because that is not appropriate.
yeah. And do you feel like most women like that you see, maybe you don't have a like percentage of it, but like, do you feel like most have more pelvic floor tension and it's harder to relax than the opposite because of the stress everyone's under, maybe the types of workouts they've been doing, or do you feel like it's like mixed up?
I think it's definitely mixed. I mean, it actually, prior to giving birth, I would say the majority of women have pelvic floor tension if they're having a problem.
Okay.
It could be that could be causing painful intercourse, straining with bowel movements, incomplete bladder emptying.
Hmm.
It's really a tension issue. We do see some weakness challenges when it comes to female athletes. So, like,
Uh,
especially higher impact sports like basketball or volleyball or cheer and dance, where there's a lot of like jumping.
yeah.
So those are, women who have never given birth, never been pregnant, and they often have urinary leakage. So I
Wow.
definitely see both, but I would say pregnancy and postpartum, a lot of women have weakness, but a lot of have tension too. And so
Yeah.
it just is kind of, I would say it's almost 50-50.
And is there any difference between pelvic floor issues if you gave birth vaginally versus C-section?
Such a great question. Pregnancy itself changes your pelvic floor. So the first thing I want to kind of debunk is that if you have a vaginal birth, then you're going to have pelvic floor problems. And if you have a C-section, then you're going to avoid all pelvic floor problems. That is just not the case.
Mm-hmm.
So pregnancy itself, carrying a baby, affects your pelvic floor, and it typically weakens it. If we think about this hammock of muscles, your pelvic floor muscles, they support a growing uterus and fetus during pregnancy, kind of like a hammock.
Right.
And if you put, a lemon or an avocado, kind of like, these texts we get telling us the size of our baby,
Yeah.
if you put that in a hammock, that hammock's not going to change that much. It's not going to sink that much lower. But if
Right.
you put a watermelon or a pumpkin in a hammock, that hammock's going to sink lower. It's going to
Right.
stretch out. And that's what happens to your pelvic floor during pregnancy. So,
Right.
pregnancy itself changes your pelvic floor, and why it's really so important that people get therapy during pregnancy, especially if they're experiencing pain or leakage. Now, postpartum, if you have a vaginal births typically result in more weakness type issues like pelvic organ prolapse or urinary incontinence
Mm-hmm.
because of prolonged pushing or tearing at the vaginal opening.
Yeah.
But cesarean births typically can lead to other things related to pelvic floor tension, like painful intercourse, painful
Mm.
bowel movements, incomplete bladder emptying, painful menstruation,
Wow.
because that abdominal scar kind of tends to get restricted, and that can cause this like tightness in the abdominals and the pelvic floor fascia that's connected to it, that can lead to some of these kind of tension, painful related issues.
Okay. So that's okay. That's great to know. So for people who are listening who like they haven't gone to a pelvic floor physical therapist yet, they're obviously all going to after this and they're going to follow you too. But and like whether they're maybe it's different per like stage of life, so you'll let me know, but whether they're trying to conceive, pregnant, postpartum, what are some signs? I know you've already listed some of them, but what are some signs that their pelvic floor might be weak versus strong? And also like, not does it make a difference, it obviously makes a difference from the treatment, but either way you need to get support. It's not like one's better than the other, right? A weaker
Right.
tension, right?
Right. So I would say just kind of overall, knowing what your pelvic floor does and what it plays a role in can give you some clarity on like, oh, if I'm having like a sexual health problem or a bladder health
Hmm.
problem, then your pelvic floor is probably involved. So
Okay.
if you're having typically leakage with coughing, sneezing, running, jumping, like impact, what we call stress incontinence is
Hmm.
related to pelvic floor weakness,
Which
uh,
people make normal, by the way.
which
Like,
is not normal at all. Like
yeah,
no
I was
amount
like,
of leakage
oh,
is normal.
I had a baby, so like, of course I'm leaking. I'm like, no, like, that's
It's
not
like
normal.
saying I had a baby, so like my back hurts, but I'm like, but you can get therapy for your back. Like you can
Right,
change your posture, you can do core exercises, right? Like that's the
right,
same thing for your pelvic floor. I think
right.
the tricky thing is with leakage is that it doesn't get better with time. So as
Mm.
only as you get older, the more babies you have, when your hormones start to decrease during perimenopause and postmenopause, you have less estrogen, leakage gets worse. And so if you don't start addressing it, even the smaller leaks, then it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse, which is why 50% of women over the age of 65 leak urine. It's like
Wow,
half of us are going to end up in diapers and liners, which sucks. And so I'm like, I think
wow,
there's an opportunity to really improve that for women.
wow. And so, and wow, oh my God, that's crazy. And obviously, doing things in your younger years is obviously going to help prevent that when you're older. Now, you said that this doesn't improve with time. Does any pelvic floor issue improve with time?
Some of them just kind of come and go, but like, yeah, but I think it's kind of like if you don't know, if you don't get to the root cause of what's contributing to your issue, like if you have
Totally.
painful sex. So let me go back just a step to finish the
Yeah,
symptoms.
go
So
ahead.
other things that are related to pelvic floor weakness or pelvic organ prolapse is when your organs aren't supported as well by your pelvic floor muscles, and it could lead to like your bladder or balls like pushing into the vaginal walls. It feels like
Mm,
there's a bulge at the opening of your vagina, like you can't empty your bladder well, or there's pressure in your vagina. And even things like low back pain, right? Those are all kind of weakness related issues. Tension related issues for your pelvic floor typically have to do with pain. So, tailbone pain, hip pain, abdominal pain, painful bowel movements, painful menstruation, clitoral pain, painful intercourse,
uh,
um, discomfort with orgasms or painful orgasms, and even things like a hard time starting your urinary stream, like having to push to start your stream, or constipation or straining with bowel movements or hemorrhoids. So
mm.
those sorts of things are typically tension related.
Would
So
with the orgasm too, would having a difficult time orgasming in general be under that?
it could be either. So sometimes people have a hard time orgasming because the muscles are weak, because your pelvic
Okay.
floor muscles contract and relax with an orgasm if they're really weak, which some people report
They can't control.
postpartum.
Okay.
Yeah, so it really kind of depends, but pain with something is typically associated with pelvic floor tension.
Tension. Okay. Sorry to
Um,
cut you off. Keep going.
No, these are great questions. I think they're questions everybody's going to have, but we don't realize like, oh, my pelvic floor muscles are related to my ability to orgasm, or
Yeah.
my tailbone pain, right?
Right. Which I
And
had an injury to my tailbone and I just connected these dots in high school. I was a cheerleader. I was a dancer, all these things you were talking about. I'm like, check, check. And I got dropped from a stunt and there was like a few injuries like in a row, whatever. And I like essentially broke my tailbone, but there's nothing they could do about it. And I
right.
was like 15 and I always, even still to this day, if I'm
Yes.
like sitting in a chair, sitting in a car, like I'll have tailbone pain, I'll have low back pain, things like that. And I'm like, wow, that obviously must have affected my pelvic
Yeah.
floor health.
Your pelvic floor muscles attached to your tailbone. So those muscles can get
Wow.
tight or in spasm. And when you sit, we call it like sacral sitting or slouching, or you sit for a long time or on a certain surface, those muscles kind of get tight and spasmy, and that causes the tailbone pain.
Yeah,
So,
always.
yeah. So there's different, I mean, so it's interesting because I mean, there are people who are getting their tailbones surgically removed for the pain, but I'm like, it could have been muscle tension, or like a tight ligament. And so it's really one of those things that I think the medical system has doctors that look at every system, your uterus, your bladder, your colon, right? But we are the muscle specialists as physical therapists who look at the muscles that cross all of those systems. So
Mm,
if you're having an issue where you feel like they're ruling out all these tasks and nothing's wrong, and you haven't had a pelvic floor muscle assessment, you should, because even if you
yeah,
have like endometriosis or overactive bladder, your pelvic floor muscles are still involved.
right. Okay, that's so good to know. Okay, so these are symptoms that they could be experiencing. Now, what would you say is like the like exercises, common exercises that you see people doing that are actually damaging your pelvic floor?
I think when we do things where we like constantly hold our pelvic floor tight. So this can be whether we are just like sucking our stomach in all day because we want to have a flat stomach and we think like, oh, to strengthen or get a flat stomach or a strong pelvic floor, I just need to like hold tight. You
Wow.
don't strengthen a muscle by just like holding it tight, right? You have to
Mm,
contract it and then fully relax it. So just like over clenching, over tightening and sucking in. The other thing is not balancing strengthening with relaxation. So if you do bar, if you do Pilates, if you do CrossFit, and where we're building up all this muscle tone, but we're so tight and we don't, balance that with relaxation and stretching and deep breathing and opening up our hips and our inner thighs, then our muscles just tend to stay in this tight state and then they don't relax well either. So I
yeah.
think that's an important thing. And then also, if you experience certain things like leakage with heavy weightlifting or CrossFit or jumping, and you just keep pushing into that zone, your leakage is not going to get better. Like, this is where your body's telling you, like, I can't keep up with what you're asking me to do. It's like you have, like, knee pain with running. Like, it's not going to get better if you just keep running longer distances, right?
Right.
Like, you have to kind
Right.
of address the issues, like how you're moving, the muscle tension, the muscle length. So I think it's just important for folks to know, like, you can do that, but your pelvic floor is not responding to what you're asking it to do.
Yeah, and most people will skip the stretching, the relaxation because it's like,
Totally.
well, I'm not burning calories. I'm not getting skinnier from that, especially postpartum, like all of that stuff. So that's so great to know. And then are there any exercises that are the best for it?
So it's all about, again, balance. Like, if you're doing a ton of yoga and you're not like engaging your core, your abs, that's not going to benefit you. If you are, doing bar and Pilates, but you're not activating your or engaging your pelvic floor as you do those things, then you're not going to get the full benefit of those things. I think when
Mm,
I see a lot of moms during pregnancy or postpartum, I'm like, okay, we need to start like pelvic floor strengthening. And they're like, oh, I don't want to put another thing on my to-do list, right? But you
yes.
can incorporate these exercises and these strategies into things you're already doing. Like, if
Mm,
you leak when you cough or sneeze, and I'm like, do a Kegel before you cough, right? If you are lifting weights at the gym, then like pre-contract your pelvic floor. You don't always have to do that, but once your pelvic floor gets stronger with lifting, you're going to be able to just have more pelvic floor tone. So just kind of
mm.
teaching your body to activate these muscles in during workouts that you're already doing is going to give you more bang for your buck.
And how can we like do that? Like again, is it I mean, we kind of all know like a Kegel, but like how would you recommend actually doing that? Like do you have like verbal cues for someone who would be able to do that?
Yeah, so I have a ton of videos on this on my website, that's in my kind of exercise program. So the first thing is, like, you got to connect with this part of your body, and none of us have even done that. So
Yes.
I think start sitting down, taking some big deep breaths to kind of relax your muscles and tension and nervous system. And then my favorite cue for people is to think about sipping up a smoothie with your vagina, because you're like
Mm,
sucking up with your vag. It's not a tightening your butt. It's not a clenching your tush or squeezing your thighs together. It's a
right.
squeeze and a lift of the vagina, but you're also closing the anal sphincter and urinary sphincter. So it's the front and the back part of the muscle. And then you
Okay.
fully relax. You can try that one time while you're peeing, like do a stop pee test. I don't want you doing Kegels any other time when you're peeing, but do a stop pee test, and that's a Kegel contraction. And then you want to
Okay.
fully relax it. So you can test it those two ways, and then that's how you know that you're doing it properly. And then you can bring that into your workouts.
Okay. And then what are some things like you just mentioned, the stopping, the peeing and all of that? Like, are there things women are doing like that? And are there other examples on a daily basis that are making it worse besides the like exercise stuff we just talked about?
Yeah, so actually some of it's just daily habits. Like, if you like when you pee, if you are pushing when you pee, I call us them power peers. Like, all of us moms are notorious for being power peers because we're like, we got to get out of here as soon as possible.
Yes.
When you pee, you should be sitting down, so not hovering, taking
Um,
big deep breaths and just letting your bladder push the urine out instead of you pushing for it. So sit, chill, breathe, don't power pee. For pooping, making sure that your poops are super soft. I say it should come out like soft serve. And then using a squatty potty or a stool under your
yes.
feet. And then don't hold your breath when you're straining to have a bowel movement. You should be exhaling like you're blowing out a bunch of candles. You can
Mm,
push during pooping, but don't hold your breath. Just exhale as you're pooping. And
okay.
then the other thing is, I also say, like, exhale with exertion. So if you're pushing furniture, if you're lifting your kids out of the bathtub, if you're lifting a heavy stroller into the trunk of the car, exhale, don't hold your breath. When you hold your breath, it kind of traps this pressure in your pelvic cavity. And if you've got pelvic floor or core weakness, it's going to go to those areas which are already weak. So exhale with exertion. All of those things are like super easy to build into your day. But
Yeah.
again, no one has taught us those strategies.
Literally, especially like when you're postpartum and you're lifting the car seat and you're
Totally.
doing all these things. Which you mentioned diastasis before, and every pregnant person gets that, right? So is it easier for someone to heal that more quickly postpartum, or are you able to heal that years after? Like, what is that like?
So it depends. So not 100% of women get it during pregnancy, but I would say many women do. And
Oh.
if you get it during pregnancy, it often kind of persists postpartum. So what diastasis recti is, it's like a stretching or a thinning of the tissue between the midline of your six-pack muscles, which makes sense. Like our abdomen is super stretching to accommodate a growing baby. So that tissue between the six-pack muscles gets really thinned out and stretched out. Now, in order to kind of get more tension in that tissue postpartum, you can train your pelvic floor and core. So a lot of the workouts I have in my exercise program are based on engaging your pelvic floor and your deep core transverse muscles to
Mm,
kind of get that tension back between your abs. Now, I think since the majority of women have this, I do think that it's important for people to know how to properly engage. Like you can't just do crunches, right? Like you can't just do
right.
crunches and get your six pack back. So you've got to do certain, like engaging those deep core and pelvic floor muscles, do a lot of rotational movement. So not just up and down, but like doing some oblique work as well to kind of get all those abs to come back together is what's really important, and do your pelvic floor training. So it's kind of a whole picture, but I would say that, you know, if you are, I've had patients who they work out during pregnancy and they do great with this. And I've had patients who work out during pregnancy and they have a severe diastasis. A lot of it is based on genetics and size and things like
Mm,
that. So there's nothing you can do to quote unquote like prevent it. But I
right.
think that there's some strategies you can do to kind of, if you see it happening, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't like crunch up to get out of bed. I can roll to my side or not do crunches on my back. I can kind of like, you know, do something else where I'm not seeing that happen over and over again, and then do different types of core work.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Um, Especially because a lot of people will think like, oh, crunches for abs, but it's like that's actually not the best for.
No, it's not. And there's so
Yeah.
many other things that you can do that are core work that are not crunches, which you should be doing. I mean, you've got like 4 different layers of abs, and crunches work
Right.
one of them.
Wow. Oh my God. Okay. Um, oh, there's something else in there you said that I wanted to circle back to. Did I stasis? It'll come back to me. Okay. So for someone who is, let's say they're pregnant right now,
Hmm.
what would be like the top two things you would want them to do to help support their pelvic floor during pregnancy?
So I'm big on proactive, you know.
Okay, so then maybe before pregnancy.
No, 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 during pregnancy. So like
Oh, okay.
proactive strengthening. So I would say during, you can continue to exercise. So like
Yes.
unless you've got like really severe like bed, you know, bed bound restrictions, like exercise is great. It's fine. It helps you,
Yes.
it helps baby, it helps postpartum recovery, but you likely need to modify your workouts during your pregnancy. So you can run throughout your whole pregnancy, you can do planks and push-ups and all that stuff, but you likely will need to modify as your body is changing.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of core and pelvic floor strengthening your first and second trimesters, and the third trimester to focus more on relaxation of the hips and pelvis.
Mm,
So to have a vaginal birth, which, you know, about 30, I would say 70 to 75% of moms have a vaginal birth in the US. You want to make sure that your pelvic floor muscles are relaxing and kind of getting out of the way. We don't want super tight,
yes.
tense pelvic floor muscles in that third trimester. We want
Right.
strong, but we also want mobile and relaxed and lengthened. So the lengthening is really important in the third trimester. So that's one thing I would focus on. The other thing is that if you're having symptoms like back pain, pubic symphysis pain, urinary leakage, prolapse, diastasis, to start working on it during pregnancy.
Mm,
Because the research is very clear. If you do pelvic floor training during pregnancy or kind of address some of these symptoms during pregnancy, they're more likely to improve postpartum. So when
wow.
a doctor tells you just wait until you're done having the babies, that's actually not right, because if you
Yeah.
wait until afterwards, your risk goes up and your recovery takes longer.
Okay. And the relaxing, like you said, what are things people could do for that to help relax, like in the third trimester?
So a lot of this is I have all this entire childbirth prep program in my
Oh, amazing.
yeah, and my app that's coming out. So
Oh,
a
so
lot of
cool.
it's a lot of work on like yoga type stretches to open the hips and the pelvis,
Hmm.
perineal massage to soften the base of the vaginal opening to minimize the risk of severe perineal tearing, learning
Wow.
how to push properly because
Oh,
nobody teaches us. So
tell me
learning
about
how
it.
to
Thank God
push
for my doula, because I would be
right.
like, I don't know what I'm doing. Because she's like, okay, you're doing it wrong. Do it like this now. Like literally as I'm doing it, because like you don't,
You don't
especially the first
know.
time, like you don't know.
You
Just
don't
like
know. And then
I'm
you
there
sometimes have
down.
medication or you're in like a room with 10 people and a ton of fluorescent lights or you're lying on your back.
Oh,
So learning how to push, learning how to breathe, learning how to push in different positions. So all
yes.
of the, learning how to massage your hips and your pelvis with these exercise balls to release a lot of that tension. So
Mm,
all of these things that are going to help you with labor and birth, whether you have a C-section, whether you have a vaginal birth or whether you have an
yes.
unmedicated birth, like all of the above, nobody teaches us how to take care of our body during that process. And so it's really
So
important that
insane.
I know, it's really important that
That's
you
so
do so.
insane. It's like I wonder how much better the recovery could be, the like reduction of postpartum depression or anxiety could even be if like you're doing this, because a lot of that is too like I'm sure a lot of the postpartum issues, not I'm sure, I know, come from body image issues, dealing with all of that, not being able to support their bodies because they don't know what they're doing. Like it's just so stressful on top of becoming a parent.
Well, I
Um,
always think about that because, we'll tell moms like you need to get this much exercise after, baby to for your mental health. I'm like, if you're peeing your pants, you're not going to go work out. If you're so scared
no.
because you feel like your body is broken or in pain, like you're not going to work out. Like we need to give people the tools to set them up for success instead of like throwing them out there and be like, okay, let me know if this is a problem. I'm like, assume it's going to be a problem. So like, let's give them support sooner.
Yeah, especially if it's just like, okay, you can go back to do whatever workouts you did before.
I
Those
know
like
that's,
women are
yeah.
running at 6 weeks, and I'm like, oh my God, like it's just so crazy. Okay, so that's great. And then what about people who are trying to conceive? What are things you would recommend for that? Or I guess just like that's general pelvic floor
Yeah, so
support?
I would say if you know that you have a history of pelvic floor tension or weakness, then I would start doing some exercise. If you've got tension, like you've had painful sex or painful periods, or start doing
Endometrium.
kind of some of the more these yoga type routines, working on like relaxation of your nervous system, some deep breathing, things like that. Also learning to engage with your pelvic floor. If you're already working out, like learning how to contract and relax, because once you're pregnant, like your pelvic floor is changing, right? So
Yeah.
if you can kind of learn how to connect with these muscles before your pregnancy starts. If you have any weakness issues like prolapse or leakage, you can start doing strengthening beforehand
Mm,
in the trying to conceive phase. But I think more than anything, kind of just do a little like assessment, do an audit. Like, am I pushing when I pee? Am I having easy to pass bowel movements? Am I exhaling with exertion? Am
mm,
I engaging my pelvic floor and core and then relaxing during workouts? I think when you don't have so much on your plate, like focus on those kind of
yes.
habits that you can build in now, because then when you do get pregnant or you
Oh,
are postpartum, it's
it's so
already
much
built
easier.
in. Yes.
Yes. I always say that with like the lifestyle because I help women, get pregnant with like lifestyle, nutrition, all these things, which you're talking about the nervous system, like that's going to help you get pregnant too. So like double whammy. But anyway, it's like the habits that you're building now before you have a child, it's going to make you like it's gonna make it so much easier for you to like pick that back up once you actually have the baby because it's already things that you're used to doing. You're not having to like relearn
Yeah,
how to do
totally.
things, which obviously like, and if you're someone who is in postpartum and you're like, what, I didn't learn this, like obviously you still can, but it just makes everything so much easier when you are
Because
building
it's just
these skills
habit. You're
before.
building the habit. It's like
Yeah,
brushing your teeth. Like if you already do
exactly.
these things, then it's just automatic.
Exactly. Okay, I love that. And then for postpartum, so say they're listening and they're postpartum and they're dealing with, I don't know, the diastasis, the leaking, anything like that. What are some things, like two things you'd recommend they do, aside from obviously everybody like going to a pelvic floor therapist? Because once I did that too, it's like, excuse me, you could follow all these things online and stuff, which is amazing too. But having someone in person
100%.
that's like
Nothing beats it.
yeah, they're like, okay, this is exactly what's going on. This is exactly what you need to do. Like, it is so helpful. But anyway, for people, some people don't have access to that, which is why it's amazing that you do this, especially if it's not covered by insurance, with a lot of times it's not, which is so insane.
I
But
know.
anyway, what would you recommend they focus on?
So I think if it all depends. So I think the first thing is kind of discovering whether you have pelvic floor tension or pelvic floor weakness, because I think
Okay.
everyone assumes like after giving birth that you're just weak, and that may not be the case.
Right.
So I actually have a quiz on my website, which is
Oh,
the
amazing.
vagwhisper.com, and you can take a quiz that kind of walks through your symptoms, kind of your life stage, and it tells you whether you have tension, or like you're likely to have tension or you're likely to have weakness, and kind of guides you through like what's the right program. So if you
Amazing.
have pelvic floor tension, as we talked about, a lot of the things are going to be yoga poses, doing massage with like balls and foam rollers and cupping to your hips and your abs,
Mm.
looking at how you're sitting and standing. Like if you're holding baby on one hip all the time, make sure that you're switching sides. If you're tucking your
Oh,
hips
yeah.
forwards, kind of get into more of a neutral pelvis. And how are
That's
you
my issue.
sleeping? So all of the things that we're kind of day to day doing, like how can you just make these small modifications that can help? And
Mm.
then the other thing is if you have weakness, like typically it's not going to get better by itself. So if you are experiencing urinary leakage at 3 months postpartum, there's a high chance you're still going to be experiencing it at a year postpartum. So this
Wow.
is why I say if at 3 months you're like, I've got pain with sex, I've got urinary leakage, like start addressing it,
Yeah.
so that you can, because again, it's not likely going to improve on its own. The one
Yeah.
thing I will say is that if you're lactating, if you're breastfeeding or pumping, that lowers your estrogen levels. And
Mm.
that's why you don't often have a period come back for a long time when you're pumping or breastfeeding. So if you're lactating, you have low estrogen levels, and that thins and weakens your pelvic floor. So you may
Mm.
likely, it takes more time for your pelvic floor to get stronger. It takes more time for your abs to kind of come back together. So it's not that you should stop doing that. Just have grace with yourself that like you're in the season of like,
Wow.
that's the priority. I need to proactively do some of this stuff for my pelvic floor and core, but I may not really see where I am until after I'm done pumping or
Oh my God.
breastfeeding.
This just like blew my mind. I breastfed for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so I just stopped in like the very end of June, when like right after she turned 2. And so that's, I would, oh, I wish I knew that because it's
Yeah.
like you beat yourself up over it because I'm like, I'm exercising, I'm doing all these things, da da da. And I'm like, I'm doing the things for diastasis. And it's like, there was still like an inch separation and it like wasn't closing. And like, wow, it's like,
Yeah.
that's so helpful to know.
And even the same thing with sex, like it causes low estrogen causes vaginal dryness, which can cause
Yeah,
pain
for
with sex.
sure.
So it's
Like
like
you
one of
gotta
those
get
things that,
lube.
right, you've got to get a good lube, and not like
Yeah.
the over the counter at
No,
the drugstore.
disgusting.
Like you've got to
No.
get like a good lube. No, I mean, nothing against like,
Fragrance.
yeah, no fragrances,
Oh,
no tingling, no burning, like no
yeah.
chemicals. And so it's just one of those things that I think if we tell women this, like they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. And then we're just giving ourselves grace because we understand the
Yes.
process versus
Wow.
like feeling like we're just like swimming upstream for 2 years.
Yes. So how long after, I mean, obviously it's different for everybody, but in general, like say you stop breastfeeding and you're like, you did some stuff during pregnancy, but now you're really focusing on it more postpartum. Say, like, I'll just use me for example. Like, say I have diastasis. Like, I recently went, it was sometime over this summer, and I still had like an inch like separation, I think below and above the
Mm-hmm.
belly button. How long will it take? I guess it obviously depends on what you're doing, but like
Right. I
on
was going to say
average,
it depends.
like, yeah.
It takes 6 to 8 weeks to start thickening and like getting more skeletal muscle.
Okay.
So think about if you're lifting weights with your biceps, like when would you expect results? Typically between six
Right.
to eight weeks, your muscles will start to hypertrophy, right? And so
Okay.
expect to see some improvements in that during that time frame, with the combination of increasing estrogen levels, that kind of thing can help. And so
Mhm.
I would say somewhere around 2 to 3 months. But what I will say is that if I have a mom who's like, I want to have a surgery to correct my diastasis, or I want to have a tummy tuck, or I say wait until after a year, and when you are completely done breastfeeding or nursing, and when you're
Yeah.
done having kids. Like
Yeah.
if you want to
Right.
have more kids, then you should wait. If you want
Yeah.
to have, if you are still breastfeeding or nursing at 2 years, but you're like, I want a tummy tuck, I'm like, be completely done, because then we don't know what your normal tissue status is before you
Totally.
go in and have a surgery. So we want to kind of
Mm.
build everything up prior to surgery and after surgery, but like maybe a year postpartum. But I've had moms go at 9 months, when they've got more severe diastasis, but I typically see wait a year and be done having kids and be done breastfeeding.
Okay. Um, and then I don't know if this is really, I'm assuming it is, but like rib flares, is
Yeah.
that okay? Because that's like, I'm selfishly asking these questions, but I know other people have this.
Yeah.
Um, I have like a left rib flare,
Yeah.
and I'm like so conscious of it now that I'm learning about it. Like when I'm doing, like, I'll do like Pilates a lot of times, or like be the method, like all different things like that. But I'm like, I'll notice when it's like popping out, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
but is that's obviously connected? Is that connected to diastasis too?
Not particularly. So diastasis
Okay.
is kind of more the midline. It can be, but if you, particularly with the ribs on one side, what happens is that one, when your baby is in your belly, it's like your ribs expand and open up. So you get these kind of ribs flared on both sides. Sometimes,
Yeah.
depending on the position of the baby, it's one more than the other. What I would look at is the things you're doing during the day. So if you're crossing your
Mm.
legs the same way all the time, if you're carrying a
Uh-huh.
baby on your left hip all the time or your right hip, if you are, so those are the kind of things I would look at, that it's like
Mm.
I have a rib flare on my left because I'm constantly crossing my legs and going towards the right. So it's a little
Wow.
bit more, I would look at your posture and the activities that you've been doing that
Okay.
lead to that kind of over, that rotation on one side versus, a diastasis. So it's a little bit of where these like little puzzle pieces start to kind of come
Yeah.
into play of like, oh, I always carry my kid on my left side, and like I need to kind of vary that and put them on my right side. Or I sit in my desk and I'm like constantly crossing my legs and going one way. You kind of need to look at that and adjust and
Wow.
diversify your movements and posture so that you're not doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. And then there's like, are there specific exercises to help with the rib flare?
Totally. So the first thing is kind of making sure that you're a nice neutral spine. So a lot of us tend to kind of like stick our chest and our ribs out when we have kids because that's like how we're holding baby. That's our pregnancy posture, and we don't correct
Yes.
that. I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan of releasing all the muscles in your back. So getting on a foam roller, getting on a massage ball,
Okay.
lots of mobility in the back muscles.
Mm.
I love doing some overhead stuff. So like taking
Okay.
hands and pulling my ribs down overhead, like if I'm lying on my
Mm.
back, and then doing some core work. Things that
Okay.
kind of set your ribs in that like nice neutral position,
Yeah.
holding it there with your core, and then doing some lower body stuff.
Okay, yeah. I have a pelvic tilt too, so I'm sure that doesn't help. Like I always have. Like my butt just like the back of my body just like always goes like
Yeah, yeah.
that.
And so think about that. That kind of automatically makes your ribs like flare out. So kind of
Yes.
adjusting your posture when you're doing some of this core work, kind of flattening your back a bit more,
Yeah.
flattening your ribs a bit more. And then you can do a lot of diagonal stuff, like things where you're
Mm.
pulling up and going down. That's going to kind of help bring those ribs across the body. So
Okay.
there's definitely things you can do. It takes time, but you could do all of this. But if you're still carrying your kid on one hip all the time,
I know. I definitely favor one
and no
side
shade on mom.
for
Like
sure.
I've been there, and I have that left rib flare, and it's because I like carried kids on my hip for 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still carrying. And also I'm thinking too, like we co-slept and I was always like, is sleeping on one side a thing too, or does that matter?
It doesn't matter unless it's giving you issues. Like if you're having
Okay.
sciatica, if you are having some of these rotations, I would kind of think about like putting a pillow between your knees to keep your hips and pelvis
Yeah,
nice and
yeah.
neutral, or hugging a pillow with your arm at top so that you're not like rolled over. Yeah, those
Yes.
things might
Yeah.
help.
And breastfeeding for so long, I feel like I was just like always, my posture was just like shot. Okay, that's all so good. So tell us about your book and your app coming out and all these resources that you have available because it's so important. And you just like really explain things in a really good way. You have great energy. And it's like it's a topic where like you want it to feel like your friend is talking to you about it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like you don't want it to feel like sticky and weird and like a science lesson, which you bring that energy, which is great.
Thank you. Well,
So
I mean, this is like dinner table conversation for me. And so
yeah,
I
I get
have been
it.
doing this for 18 years. And I think one of the things is that people often feel really alone or embarrassed and isolated when they're having these issues. But I'm like, so many women experience them. We just
Yeah.
don't talk about them. So my
Yes.
goal is to really normalize pelvic floor conversations instead of normalizing pelvic floor problems.
Mm,
So I just had my book come out this past summer in June. It's called Floored, A Woman's Guide to Pelvic Floor Health at Every Age and Stage.
so
You can
good.
get it wherever you buy books.
We'll obviously
And
put it in the show notes.
And then so that is a really kind of affordable, accessible resource to learn more about the pelvic floor. It's got a lot of tips and tools in there so you can start doing things at home. And then I also have an app that's launching November 3rd. And if anybody signs up for the wait list, you get 30 days free.
Ooh.
I know. So I'll send you
Oh,
the
and this
link
is
for
coming
that.
out before. Yeah. So we'll put that
Perfect. I'll
wait
send you the
list.
link for that so that your community can use it. But it's
Yes.
got, workouts for, trying to conceive, pregnancy, postpartum,
Oh my God.
perimenopause, pelvic floor tension, painful sex. Really, I want it to be like your pocket pelvic floor PT. There is
Yes.
no replacement for seeing someone in person, but there aren't enough pelvic floor therapists in our
Totally.
country to
It's not
support how
accessible.
many women are having babies every year and then just how
Yeah.
many women we have. And as you
And the
said, it can be
affordability of it.
and the affordability. And I have patients who go to pelvic floor PT and then they also do my workouts. And so I
Yeah.
think it's one of
Oh
the
yeah.
ways to just kind of make sure that you're on the right track at home and then also just make something really affordable and accessible for women so that they can have an entry point to start taking care of their body. So
Yes.
and then I'm on Instagram, as I said, as the Vagina Whisperer, and then on TikTok as the Vag Whisperer because TikTok doesn't like the word vagina.
Oh my God. It's so ridiculous. I wonder if penis is okay, but vagina.
No, I don't know if there's a penis whisperer out there, but like that
Hopefully
account's
not.
not for me. So
Yeah, no, fucking thank you. Um, but even if like someone does go, because obviously you recommend like going to a pelvic floor in person, you do that, right? By you as well.
I live in New Orleans and I work at a
Yes.
clinic where we have in-person sessions. We also have virtual sessions. So if you go to my website, The Vag Whisperer, we
Oh,
do
so
online
cool.
consults. Like I just did one this morning with someone. And so I
Amazing.
think the cool thing about medicine now is there's so many entry points for people to get care.
Yes.
And there's not, I mean, again, in-person care is optimal.
Yes.
But if that is not an option for you for whatever
Hmm.
reason, then you've got other options. And it's really
Yes.
just a kind of, the research is clear, like 1 hour of education can help improve someone's symptoms.
Oh my
So I
God.
think we just need to kind of like start having these conversations, giving women the education and resources to help because so many of us experience these problems and there are definitely solutions to help improve them.
Yeah. And even if like you go for a session in person, then you know, okay, what's up? And then you could use the app to be like, okay, I have
Totally.
X, Y, and Z. Now let me go in the app, look for these exercises. And then you could do that in the comfort of your home and you only needed to go like one time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I mean, and I'm a
Um,
mom. So it's like I made these
yeah.
there were some apps that were like 45 minutes. I was like, I don't have
I see
45
a
minutes.
45-minute workout and I'm like, I'm out. I don't,
Exactly. Like these are like
who
10
has
to 15
time?
minutes to start.
Perfect.
They work up to 30 minutes. So I'm like, when I created this, I was like,
That's so great.
how much time do I have? I have 10 minutes. And so like
Yeah.
that's what I need. That's all
So
that I have
real.
some days. So it's really to
Yes.
make this accessible for women and moms to work into our lives.
Oh my God, that's so amazing. I'm so glad you said the 45 minutes. I'm like, no thank. I'm not even gonna click play at all. Like
I know.
so that's amazing. Okay. And you also said you have that free quiz for them to find out
Yep,
if
that's
it's
just on my
tight
website,
on
the
your website. Okay.
vagwhisper.com or the vaginawhisper.com. They can take that and it kind of gives you exactly like what type of workouts you need to start with. And you can either check out the app with those, you can do some things at home. I mean, there's so many options. I think the biggest thing is like there are things out there, and especially right now on social media and it's a fire hose of information.
Oh
And I
my
think
gosh.
sometimes it can be so overwhelming that people are like, where do
Yes.
I start? And I really want to make this like very easily accessible and like where you're like, okay, this is from a board certified pelvic floor PT.
Right.
They're been vetted. It's not
Yes.
overly intense. And sometimes it's like, Sarah, this feels really simple, but I'm like, it's about building that foundation and then you stack from there versus,
Hmm.
you're trying to run a marathon and you haven't even learned to run a mile yet. Like we have to really help
Yes.
build that foundation of our core after birth and then we can start doing more.
And we have such a warped view. It's like, well, I'm not breaking a sweat and
I
killing
know.
myself in this workout. So like it's doing nothing. It's like, that's not actually real.
I
Like we
know. But
just
then
think
we get to the
efficient.
point where we've got some sweaty workouts too, but I'm like, you got to have the pelvic floor like
Yeah,
activation to get there. So it definitely can
totally.
build. And then I also tell moms, I'm like, it's there when you need it. Like I didn't even
Mhm.
start pelvic floor therapy till I was 18 months postpartum, and I'm a pelvic floor therapist. So
Right. It's
it's
true.
never too late to start. And like
Amazing.
these things, like once you get the hang of it and space opens up in your life, like it's there for you.
That's so amazing. I'm getting on the wait list. I can't wait to put that on there. November 3rd, and you get through 30 days free.
30 days
That's
free. And then I'm
so
like, cancel it.
amazing.
Like at least you can figure out what a pelvic floor workout looks like. At least you can get
Yes.
started. At least you can be like, oh, these are the things I need to be doing. Like I just really want to
That's so good.
normalize this care for women.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for doing all of this and for putting these resources out. We'll put everything in the show notes, your book, your app, your website, everything. Please go check this out. Share this episode with a friend. You definitely know somebody who is either pregnant, trying to conceive, postpartum, or eventually will be, or just has a vagina. So like send this with someone who has a vagina because they need to understand this. And this is such helpful information, and take that quiz so you can at least know like where you're starting from, and that'll be so helpful with the app. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. If you loved this episode and learned something valuable, please share it with a friend who you think would also love it, or post it on social media and tag me so I could personally say thank you for helping me spread this important message. I am beyond grateful to be here with you. So until next time, stay intentional, stay consistent, and always mind your hormones.